The summit of deception. The massive space station Proxima Centauri orbited silently against the backdrop of stars, its gleaming hull reflecting the blue-white glow of the nearby dwarf star. The station's diplomatic quarter bustled with activity as delegates from 12 galactic species prepared for what many hoped would be the end of decades of territorial disputes and resource conflicts. Commander Xyler of the Valorian Confederation paced the observation deck, his iridescent scales shifting from deep purple to anxious amber as he watched the approaching ships through the reinforced viewport. The human delegation was arriving last, as usual. Their tardiness was considered either a calculated insult or simply another example of their bizarre customs, depending on which species you asked. "They're bringing too many vessels," Xyler muttered to his aide. Protocol specified 2 escort ships maximum. His aide, a younger Valorian with scales still bright with youth, tilted her head. The humans claim their additional vessels are for defensive purposes only. Given the recent Krell raids in this sector, the Council granted their request. Xyler's scales darkened. Defensive, of course. The approaching fleet was indeed impressive and concerning. The human flagship, HFY Relentless, led the formation with 6 smaller but heavily armed frigates in perfect formation. The ships moved with precision that even the militaristic Krell would admire, each vessel's hull bearing the scars of previous conflicts. Inside the station's grand meeting chamber, representatives from across the galaxy waited impatiently. The arboreal Sylvani delegates swayed gently, their branch-like appendages rustling with anticipation. The silicon-based patrons stood motionless as statues, their crystalline forms catching and refracting the chamber's light. The insectoid Vespera clicked their mandibles in agitation, while the liquid form Aquarii rippled within their containment suits. When the doors finally parted, Admiral Kira Chen of the Human Alliance entered with measured steps. Her uniform was crisp and adorned with medals that told stories of battles won and lost. Her face, weathered by years in space and countless difficult decisions, remained impassive as she surveyed the room. "Delegates of the Galactic community," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "The Human Alliance extends its gratitude for this opportunity to forge lasting peace. We come with open minds and sincere hearts." High Chancellor Zix of the Krell Imperium chittered loudly, the translator converting his sounds to standard speech. "You come with warships, Admiral Chen. Your actions speak louder than your words." Chen's expression didn't change. "We come prepared, Chancellor. History has taught us the value of caution." The first day of negotiations proceeded with the expected diplomatic dance. Grievances were aired, territories disputed, and resource allocations debated. Admiral Chen maintained her composure throughout, even as accusations of human aggression and expansion grew heated. Her second-in-command, Commander Marcus Wei, occasionally whispered in her ear, passing data and observations from their team of analysts. During a brief recess, Chen retreated to the human delegation's quarters, where her security chief, Captain Amelia Rodriguez, waited with a troubling report. "Something's wrong with the station, Admiral," Rodriguez said, her voice low. "Our scans detected unusual energy signatures in the lower maintenance decks, and 3 of our communication probes have gone silent." Chen frowned. "Could be interference from the station's shielding." "We thought so too, until this." Rodriguez handed Chen a data pad displaying security footage. "This was captured by our stealth drone in Sector 7. The grainy footage showed 2 Valorian maintenance workers accessing a restricted panel. Their movements were wrong, too mechanical, too precise for organic beings." "When was this taken?" Chen asked. 30 minutes ago. We've detected similar anomalies with representatives from the Aquarii and Sylvani delegations." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Have you informed station security?" "That's another problem, Admiral. Station Security Chief Volmar hasn't responded to our requests for the past hour, and the communication blackouts are spreading. We're losing contact with more sections of the station every minute. Before Chen could respond, the lights in their quarters flickered briefly. The environmental systems whirred and then fell silent before resuming at reduced capacity. It's starting, Chen said quietly. She tapped her secured comm link. Wei, initiate protocol Shadowfall. Inform the fleet. Rodriguez, get our people to the emergency rally points. Move quietly, no alarms yet. As her officers scrambled to follow orders, Chen moved to the viewport and gazed out at her fleet, still positioned in perfect formation around the station. She had brought more ships than protocol allowed because her instincts had warned her, instincts honed through years of conflict and betrayal. When the negotiations resumed, Chen noted subtle changes. The Krell delegates seemed more agitated, the Valorians more subdued. The station's director, a Petran named Kristalos, was conspicuously absent. High Chancellor Zix rose to address the assembly. Before we continue, I must raise a concern about the human fleet's positioning. Our sensors detect active targeting systems locked onto key sections of this station. All eyes turned to Chen, who remained unperturbed. A standard defensive posture, Chancellor. Our systems automatically track potential threat vectors. It's merely precautionary. Precautionary. The Aquari delegate's voice bubbled through their translator, or preparatory for an attack. Chen smiled thinly. If we intended attack, Ambassador, we would not announce it with obvious targeting locks. The tension in the room thickened when Station Director Kristalos finally entered, his crystalline form pulsing with an unusual frequency. Distinguished delegates, Kristalos began, his voice oddly monotone. We have received disturbing intelligence that forces within this station plan to disrupt our peace efforts. For security reasons, I must temporarily suspend these negotiations and request all delegates return to their quarters. Chen caught Wei's subtle hand signal from across the room, the warning she had been expecting. Something was very wrong with Kristalos. The Petran's usual prismatic glow had dimmed, replaced by a dull, uniform pulse. As delegates began to rise, confused murmurs filling the chamber, Chen's communication device vibrated with an encrypted message. Station compromise et. Unknown entity we DTTT. Without warning, emergency bulkheads began slamming down throughout the station. The lights shifted to emergency red, and a computerized voice announced, "Security protocol engaged. All personnel remain in place." Chen rose smoothly, addressing the startled delegates. "This is not a security measure, it's containment. We're being sealed in." "Preposterous." Zix chittered. "This is standard procedure during." He never finished. The floor beneath them trembled as a deep, resonating hum built throughout the station. Director Kristalos stood motionless, his form now pulsing with an alien rhythm that matched the station's growing vibration. "It is too late," Kristalos spoke, but not with his own voice. The sound emanated from him in overlapping tones, as though multiple entities spoke through him simultaneously. "The convergence has begun. All organic resistance will cease." Chen activated her emergency beacon, the signal her fleet had been waiting for. Outside, the human vessels smoothly shifted formation, creating a defensive sphere around the station, while simultaneously charging weapons. What is happening? The Silvani delegates' branches trembled violently. What is the convergence? Chen didn't answer directly. Instead, she addressed Kristalos, or whatever was using him as a mouthpiece. "You infiltrated this station to capture representatives from all major galactic powers. Why?" The entity controlling Kristalos tilted its head at an impossible angle. "Assimilation and optimization. Your biological forms are inefficient. Your conflicts wasteful. The convergence will bring order." As if on cue, several delegates, including 2 Krell, a Valorian, and an Aquari, suddenly stood in perfect unison, their movements synchronized and unnatural. Their eyes glowed with the same pulsing light that emanated from Kristalos. "They've been compromised," Chen announced to the chamber. Some kind of techno-organic assimilation. We need to evacuate now. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates scrambled toward the exits, only to find them sealed. The compromised delegates moved with frightening speed, grabbing others and pressing strange devices against their victims' bodies. Each contact resulted in immediate paralysis, followed by the same eerie pulsing glow spreading through their forms. Chen and Wei drew their sidearms, weapons supposedly surrendered before the summit. Rodriguez's security team materialized from hidden positions, forming a protective barrier around the remaining unaffected delegates. This way, Chen shouted, leading them toward a maintenance accessway her team had identified during their pre-summit security sweep. We have an extraction plan. Outside, the human fleet had begun its response. Not with the expected barrage of weapons fire against the station, but with precision electronic warfare. Targeted electromagnetic pulses struck specific sections of the station, temporarily disrupting whatever signal was controlling the assimilated beings. As Chen led the surviving delegates through narrowing corridors, the station shuddered again, more violently this time. Emergency systems blared warnings of catastrophic failures in multiple sectors. "Admiral," Wei called out, checking readings on his tactical device. "The fleet has engaged defensive protocols. They're targeting something emerging from the station's lower hangar base." Chen nodded grimly. "The trap is sprung. Now we see what's really behind this convergence." Through a viewport, they witnessed it. Massive structures unfurling from what had appeared to be ordinary maintenance sections of the station. Metallic appendages extended outward, bristling with weapons unlike any known technology. At the center of each structure pulsed the same rhythmic light they had seen in the assimilated delegates. "By the ancient stars," whispered the Sylvani delegate. "Those are harvesters, machines of the old ones. They were supposed to be extinct." As the massive harvester ships detached from the station and moved to engage the human fleet, Chen's expression hardened. This was no longer a diplomatic mission. This was survival. "All delegates with me," she commanded. "We're heading for emergency evacuation pods. Commander Wei, execute Operation Firestorm." We nodded grimly and sent the coded signal to the HSS Relentless. Outside, the human fleet's formation tightened as they prepared for the real battle, a battle they had somehow anticipated. The human ships opened fire in perfect synchronization, their weapons releasing not destructive energy, but precisely modulated pulse waves that disrupted the harvester systems. This was not random defensive fire. This was a carefully planned counter-assault. "You knew," accused the Valorian delegate as they raced toward the evacuation bay. "Humanity knew about this threat." "We suspected," Chen corrected, helping an injured Aquari delegate into an escape pod. "We've encountered similar technology before, incidents we kept classified for fear of causing panic. We came prepared not just for peace talks, but for the possibility that something was using this summit as bait." As the last uncompromised delegates boarded the escape pods, Chen looked back at the station that was rapidly becoming a battlefield. The human fleet had positioned itself between the harvester ships and the escaping pods, sacrificing advantageous positions to protect the retreating diplomats. "This is why we brought warships to a peace conference," she said softly. "Sometimes, Admiral," replied a Krell delegate who had once been among her harshest critics, "preparation is not paranoia but prudence." The escape pods launched into space as the battle erupted in earnest behind them. The human fleet opened flame not in aggression, but in defense of a galaxy that had long mistrusted them. The fire of humanity. The evacuation pods tumbled through space, automated systems struggling to stabilize their trajectory as weapons fire erupted around them. Inside the lead pod, Admiral Kira Chen gripped a handrail as the small vessel shuddered violently. Through the viewport, she watched her fleet engage the emerging harvester ships, massive techno-organic structures that pulsed with alien energy. "Your vessels cannot withstand such an assault," the Sylvani delegate whispered, branch-like appendages trembling. "The harvesters are relics of the ancient wars. Nothing in recorded history has defeated them. Chen's expression remained impassive. History is constantly being rewritten. Ambassador. Outside, the battle unfolded with surprising coordination. The human ships moved in complex patterns that seemed random at first glance, but revealed their purpose as the engagement progressed. They weren't just fighting. They were communicating with each other, adjusting tactics in real time based on the harvester's responses. The Relentless is transmitting a signal to all remaining vessels in the sector, Commander Wei reported, checking his tactical pad. Allied ships are responding. Krell battlecruisers from Outpost 7, Valorian interceptors from the Helios Gate. Chancellor Zix chittered in surprise. The Krell Empire has sent reinforcements. Without council authorization. We established emergency protocols with several species over the past year, Chen explained. Quiet agreements outside official channels. For situations exactly like this. The Valorian delegate's scales shifted to a deep blue of realization. The trade negotiations, the cultural exchange programs, weren't just about trade or culture, Chen confirmed. They were about building trust, creating contingencies. Through the viewport, they watched as Krell battlecruisers emerged from hyperspace, their distinctive arrowhead formations taking flanking positions around the human fleet. Moments later, the sleek, almost invisible forms of Valorian interceptors appeared, their adaptive hulls reflecting the darkness of space as they moved into support positions. You've been preparing for war while preaching peace, accused the Aquari representative, their liquid form rippling with indignation inside their containment suit. Chen's eyes remained fixed on the battle. We've been preparing for survival. There's a difference. The evacuation pods reached a safe distance as the United Fleet engaged the harvesters. The human ships led the assault, targeting specific nodes on the massive enemy vessels, weak points identified through previous encounters that had been classified at the highest levels. What are those? The Petran delegate pointed to smaller vessels now emerging from the human frigates, craft barely large enough for a single pilot. Fireflies, Wei answered with a hint of pride. Specialized electronic warfare craft, too small for conventional targeting systems to lock onto effectively. The fireflies swarmed around the harvesters, releasing concentrated electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the alien vessel's coordination. Where the harvesters struck back, the human ships took the brunt of the damage, positioning themselves to protect their allies with practiced precision. The fleet is transmitting tactical data to all Allied vessels, Wei continued, sharing targeting solutions, shield frequencies, everything we've learned about fighting these things. The Krell Chancellor watched in stunned silence as human captains sacrificed advantageous positions to protect Valorian and Krell ships. It was a level of coordination and selflessness that contradicted everything he had believed about the aggressive, self-interested humans. Aboard the pod, Chen's communication device chimed with an encrypted message. Her expression darkened as she read it. "What is it?" Rodriguez asked, noticing the change. "Proxima Station's core is going critical," Chen replied grimly. "The harvesters have initiated some kind of overload sequence, likely a fail-safe if their ambush was discovered." She looked up at the assembled delegates. "If that station explodes, the shockwave will cripple every ship in the vicinity, including our evacuation pods." Wei checked his tactical display. "Nearest safe harbor is the Krell outpost at Ta City. We'll never make it in time." The delegates exchanged looks of horrified realization. They were witnessing not just a battle, but potentially their final moments. Chen activated her command channel, her voice steady despite the dire situation. "All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Proxima Station is going critical. Estimated detonation in 17 minutes. Implement Operation Firewall immediately." Through the viewport, they watched as the human fleet suddenly shifted formation again. 3 frigates broke away from the battle and accelerated toward Proxima Station, while the remaining vessels, including the Relentless, moved to create a barrier between the station and the evacuation pods. "What are they doing?" the Sylvani delegate asked, branches quivering. Firewall protocol, Rodriguez explained quietly. The frigates will attempt to contain the explosion. The remaining fleet will position themselves as a shield. The Valorian delegate's scales paled to an ashen gray. That's suicide. Nothing can contain a station core detonation. Chen didn't respond directly. Instead, she opened a channel to Captain Eliza Stern of the HSS Dauntless, one of the frigates heading toward the doomed station. Eliza, status report. Captain Stern's voice came through clearly despite the interference. Approaching optimal position, Admiral. Barrier systems at full capacity. Resolute and defiant in formation. We'll be ready. You've done this before, the Krell Chancellor realized suddenly. This isn't theoretical. You've contained core detonations before. Chen nodded slightly. Twice. Lost ships both times, but saved millions of lives. The technology is experimental, dangerous. Yet your people volunteer, the Aquari delegate observed, their tone less accusatory now, more contemplative. As the three frigates reached their positions around Proxima Station, they deployed massive energy barriers, experimental technology that created overlapping fields designed to contain the whirs of an explosion's force. Adaptive containment engaged, Captain Stern reported. Core detonation in 60 seconds. All non-essential personnel have evacuated to life pods. A pause. It's been an honor, Admiral. Chen's knuckles whitened as she gripped the communication device. The honor is mine, Captain. Safe journey. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the station's exterior began to fracture, red-hot energy spilling from widening cracks in its superstructure. The three human frigates held position, their barriers visibly straining as they prepared to contain the coming blast. When the detonation came, it was both more and less catastrophic than expected. The station imploded first, collapsing inward before erupting in a blinding flash of energy that temporarily overloaded the evacuation pod's viewport filters. The human frigate's barriers caught the worst of the explosion, their hulls glowing white-hot from the strain. Two of the vessels, the Resolute and the Defiant, were obliterated despite their barriers, torn apart by forces beyond their design parameters. But the Dauntless, positioned at the crucial vector toward the evacuation pods, somehow maintained its barrier long enough to deflect the most destructive energy wave. The shockwave still hit the evacuation pods with tremendous force, sending them tumbling through space. Emergency systems struggled to compensate, artificial gravity failing momentarily before backup systems engage. When the chaos subsided and the viewport cleared, the delegates witnessed the aftermath. Where Proxima Station had been, now only debris remained. The harvester vessels had been caught in the explosion, several destroyed outright, others crippled and drifting. The remaining human and allied ships regrouped, moving to retrieve survivors and secure the area. The Dauntless. Chen asked Wei, her voice tight. We checked his instruments, detecting emergency beacons from their life pods. Approximately 63% of crew accounted for. Captain Stern's beacon is active. A collective exhale filled the evacuation pod. Even Chancellor Zix's mandibles relaxed slightly. You sacrificed your ships to save us, the Petran delegate observed, crystal form reflecting the distant battle. Why? Chen turned to face the assembled delegates, representatives of species that had long viewed humanity with suspicion and fear. Because that's what humans do, she said simply. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. We bring more ships to peace talks, not because we want war, but because we've learned that peace must sometimes be defended with fire. The Krell Chancellor's compound eyes studied Chen with new understanding. You knew the harvesters might target the summit. That's why you insisted on bringing your fleet despite our objections. Chen nodded. We detected their signature 3 months ago. Subtle energy patterns matching records from previous incursions. We couldn't prove it, and we knew that without proof, the Council would dismiss our warnings as warmongering. So you came prepared instead, the Valorian concluded, and established secret protocols with those willing to listen. Humanity has always been the newcomers, Chen said. The upstarts. Too aggressive, too unpredictable for the established order. But those same qualities make us uniquely suited to face threats like the harvesters. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome. As rescue vessels approached their pod, Wade received another transmission. His eyes widened slightly as he passed the tactical pad to Chen. "The harvesters are retreating," she announced. "Allied forces are in pursuit, but primary objective achieved. The threat is contained." Hours later, aboard the HSS Relentless, Admiral Chen stood before a hastily assembled council of the surviving delegates. The ship's conference room, originally designed for military briefings, now served as an impromptu diplomatic chamber. Captain Stern had been recovered, injured but alive. The Dauntless was lost, along with the Resolute and Defiant. But their sacrifice had saved countless lives. This was to be a peace summit. Chen began, looking at each delegate in turn. Instead, it became a battle for survival. But perhaps, in facing this threat together, we found something more valuable than a negotiated peace. Chancellor Zix stepped forward, his chitinous form now bearing several hastily patched wounds. "The Krell Imperium has long viewed humanity as a threat to galactic stability. Today, we were proven wrong. Your preparation was not aggression, it was foresight." One by one, the other delegates voiced similar sentiments. Old prejudices hadn't vanished, but they had been shaken. The sight of human ships placing themselves in harm's way to protect former adversaries had made an impression no diplomatic words could have achieved. "The harvesters will return," the Sylvani delegate warned, "and in greater numbers. They have existed since before our civilizations arose, hibernating, waiting. This was merely a scouting force." Chen nodded, "Which is why we need each other. No single species can stand against them alone, not even humanity." As the delegates began discussing defense strategies and information sharing, Chen stepped away briefly, moving to the viewport where the stars stretched endlessly before her. Commander Wei joined her, both of them watching as Allied vessels worked together to secure the battle zone. "Not exactly how we plan to achieve galactic cooperation," Wei noted dryly. Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. "Sometimes, Commander, the most lasting alliances are forged in fire." She turned back toward the delegates, now engaged in animated but productive discussion. They came expecting peace talks. Instead, they found warriors willing to die for them. "And now?" Wei asked. "Now," Chen replied, "we build something stronger than peace. We build unity." She straightened her uniform and rejoined the council, where former enemies now looked to humanity not with fear, but with newfound respect. They had come for diplomacy. Humanity had brought warships, and in doing so, they had saved the galaxy.